What's going on, guys? I'm Weston Mack, and welcome back to One More Minute, the show where each day I get 1 more minute to talk about whatever I want. And in today's video, we are talking about the heat death of streaming services. Yes, it seems like a very dramatic title, because it is. But if you haven't already, please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. I've been loving the support recently, and you guys seem to love these videos. So, and also if you have any suggestions down below, leave them in the comments. I would be definitely happy to do anything you guys are suggesting. Anyways, the heat death of the streaming world is what I'm calling basically the inevitable end of all streaming. Now, I'm not going to necessarily say it's like, we'll never see another streaming service again. And by the way, I'm saying streaming service, not like Twitch or like YouTube or I guess it used to be TikTok Live. That's not a thing anymore. It's gone. But you see what I mean? So what I'm talking about is streaming services like Netflix, Disney Plus, Paramount Plus, Apple TV, I don't know, other ones, Amazon, but I want to go from like the very beginning and kind of map out what my mindset is thinking when it comes to this whole streaming service heat death. So the very beginning of all can be normally traced all the way back down to Netflix. And what's so funny, I think it was Blockbuster had the opportunity to buy Netflix. Of course, eventually Blockbuster would be brutally murdered by Netflix in the long run. But they did have the actual option to buy the online service where you could go on, select which movies you want, and have it directly shipped to your house. You didn't have to go out to Blockbuster and rent out a movie that you'd forget to you'd forget to send back, and then you'd have to do the rental fees. That's a whole big thing. But they missed that opportunity somehow. But this would eventually lead to movies being able to be streamed on their website, eventually their app, and it would be a minute before any other competitors would show up. But Netflix would dominate the streaming space between YouTube creators making their own content and Netflix being able to have anything you want on a streaming service where you just pay. I think it was really cheap back in the day. I think it was definitely less than $10. I don't remember how much it was though, but I know it was really, really cheap. But yeah, between that and then YouTube, the cable days were very much numbered as, nowadays, the only reason why I would watch cable is sports sometimes if I'm home, and that's about it. I don't even have a cable box linked up to my TV at the house. So, yeah. So eventually we would have the growth and addition with other streaming services, but I don't think it fully became too much of an issue until Disney Plus started, in my opinion. We already had Hulu, I think as the other major competitor, and I think there was like Amazon Fire Stick had already been doing their thing, but it really wasn't until early 2020, I believe, was when... was it early 2020? No, it was like fall of 2019 is when Disney Plus came out. That marked the end of cable reigning and the start of streaming being too annoying to use. So at that point, Disney had already kind of established how they would send out movies. They had their vault, which would normally hold all of their Disney classics and any other movies they deemed not worthy to release 24/7. What they would do is normally release on anniversary events. During that time, normally at that point, there'd be a change in how the media was shown, so whether it was VHS to DVD to Blu-ray to 4K and stuff like that. But Disney changed that. Disney, instead of doing that, and they had dabbled a little bit with putting some of their other projects, a couple of smaller ones on other streaming services, but it wasn't until they locked down Disney Plus that all changed. No longer was it, here's the 30th anniversary of Cinderella, and now we're going to publish Cinderella for Blu-ray 4K, and you get like a little special edition that's been like in all the other ones for some reason. It's not like that anymore. Now it's on Disney Plus and you can watch it. And that change was huge. I think Disney getting into the market blew up the market. Of course, Disney would later invest a ridiculous amount of money. I think out of any other part of their company, Disney Plus and their streaming services, I think still has the majority of the money allocated to it, which is crazy in my opinion. I mean, I kind of get it because they are doing a lot of projects, but like you have like the Disney resorts, which makes a ridiculous amount of money, and they didn't pump that much money into that compared to a streaming service. It's kind of crazy. So with the launch of Disney Plus and like The Mandalorian basically blowing it up, I remember watching it and going through and like watching all the High School Musical movies. Like whenever you think of Disney, you're thinking of something specific, which is very interesting because a lot of people are probably thinking of a different specific thing. When I mentioned the Disney Vault, while I'm talking about like the Disney princesses and Cinderella, Snow White, and stuff like that, you could also be thinking of more Disney classics like maybe Aladdin or The Lion King. And even in my case, whenever Disney Plus released, I was mostly watching Disney Channel stuff. So like High School Musical, Hannah Montana, the, what's it called? Halloween Town movies. Oh my gosh, I watched those so fast. There's also this one movie that I watched that was like The Smart House, where this Siri type lady takes over the house of this like suburban family thing, and it's still one of my favorite movies of all time. It's so funny, but I'm getting sidetracked. Disney Plus releases, and at that point it sets a new bar to be passed. While Netflix was the king of everything, they literally owned everything except for Disney property stuff and like Star Wars and Marvel and stuff like that. At this point, Marvel had already been acquired by Disney. So whenever it released, I mean, having almost all the Marvel movies on there, all the Star Wars movies on there, having the release of like the Clone Wars and so much more stuff being pumped on to Disney Plus that was brand new content. And of course, at that point, I mean, Netflix had already been creating like Stranger Things and stuff like that, and then making their own original content, and Apple TV was making their own original content, and then Hulu was there. So then you eventually had what was inevitable, which I assumed. I should have made a video about this because I low-key got all of it right. While some of these might have released a little bit before, a little bit after, the majority of these releasing after, I predicted that CBS, NBC, and ABC, and any of the other major networks would all be releasing their Plus versions. Now, there were already packages, as ESPN Plus was already a thing where you could stream certain games. It was more for like college and non-NFL or NBA games. It was mostly just for the lower level stuff. But ESPN Plus did exist, and they would even package it a little bit with Hulu as well. It being just a big collaborative thing where you can get all that big package together. But he then had things like Paramount Plus popping up, and then HBO Max really pushing more into that into the territory of streaming as well. While they had a huge library, it really did make sense for them to go into streaming. It was one of those things where I hope, you never know with these companies, because they can do some of the weirdest and frankly dumbest things in the world, and you're thinking, you're a multi-million-dollar company, you have resources out the wazoo, why would you make your own streaming services whenever you could maybe just sell out to Disney or Netflix or Hulu or whatever? And maybe it's a great thing where they're thinking, okay, we can at least get enough users for the next 6 months to a year, and then we'll sell all these off or merge into another thing. And that's what basically is now happening, is the merging. This is now the heat death of the streaming universe. So what I'm predicting is going to happen is one by one, each streaming service will kind of crunch, and combine. As why would you buy a streaming service like, I don't know, Paramount Plus that's on its own when you could buy Disney that has all of Hulu and Disney Plus stuff in it? It makes sense. So then why would you go with HBO Max, or it's technically Max now, that has all the Discovery Channel stuff and all of HBO Max's stuff, why would you go with Netflix at that point? You're buying one item when you can get two. So two major things I've seen are occurring. There is the lazy option of, okay, we're just gonna merge our things together, and whatever smaller object kind of now circles it. It almost feels like whenever like the earth was formed and then the moon and all that sort of stuff, it's in the same vein where basically now you have Disney Plus and then you have like ESPN and Hulu kind of revolving around it. They aren't the major players in this. Disney Plus is still the site. Now you just have to surf through like 50 seasons worth of Hell's Kitchen to try to get to the Skeleton Crew TV show. So, but then when it comes to HBO Max, I assume the same thing was going to happen. Max was going to stay like the big center thing. You're going to have all your major Cartoon Network and HBO Max shows like Game of Thrones and stuff like that. And then you're going to have Discovery Channel kind of rotating around that and kind of chilling out. What they did instead is they smashed them together, and then like 50% of the HBO Max library went poof, and then they canceled like 5 movies. And people were like, what happened? They canceled like Batwoman, and they removed like half of Cartoon Network's library. Like Uncle Grandpa just doesn't exist anymore. If you don't know what that is, I sound absolutely insane right now. Don't worry about it. Go look up Uncle Grandpa, and you'll be frightened, I think is the best way to put it. But yeah, HBO Max completely buffed the whole thing, and now it looks like they're going to be separating, which is super cool. Love that. After them being partially responsible for killing off Rooster Teeth, so super fun. Not salty about that. Anyways, yeah, and so I wouldn't be surprised if within the next couple years or so that Peacock is another place. Peacock and Paramount Plus. I wouldn't be surprised if those two collide or they go to one of the other big groups or whatever. The only reason why they wouldn't is because they are probably getting a pretty decent amount of money in the fall with people buying Paramount or Peacock and being able to stream either certain games. I know like on Peacock, is it Peacock? No, on Paramount, you can stream certain football games that aren't necessarily on live TV. And yeah, Disney Plus is probably, or ESPN Plus, whoever technically owns it, Disney's probably going to make a deal on Paramount just to get the rights for streaming stuff and be like, we're just going to take that away from you, and then you can deal with everybody else. So, yeah. So, but the thing is, out of a result of this, I feel like a growth is happening, especially over in the Netflix, Disney Plus territory. Those are the two big dogs that are clashing, and because of that, both of these companies are pumping out content like crazy. They now realize the backlog of all their stuff really doesn't work as well as it used to. Now, Disney Plus, I mean, is a complete beast. I don't think a backlog like that will ever be they don't have that good of a backlog compared to Netflix, which I feel like is struggling on certain points because they're missing so much of their backlog due to Hulu, Paramount Plus, Max, Discovery, and Peacock all taking away tons of their movies and films, and also even Marvel stuff as well. So now you have the issue of, okay, well, we can't rely on our backlog. Netflix has been pumping out stuff. Now, is everything good? No. Some days you have a, what's it called? Sometimes you have a Love is Blind India, and sometimes you have Is It Cake? Can you make an assumption about which one of those is good or bad? That's what I mean. You really don't know what you're gonna get when it comes to Netflix stuff. Sometimes you'll get a Stranger Things, and sometimes you'll get, what's the other thing? Sometimes you'll get Mike Tyson and Jake Paul fighting at like 240p because everybody's trying to watch it and they didn't know how to set up a streaming service for the first time ever. So sometimes you get that. So I think Netflix almost feels they definitely feel like they're the fighting the most to try to figure out how do we survive this compared to everybody else, while Disney's going to be coasting along on their previous content for a very long time. But Netflix is probably going to be the major innovator when it comes to this next step in the streaming verse. Now, it would be smart for them to invest into maybe buying up one of the other smaller streaming services. I don't think they will. It's more of a Disney or Max thing to do. Now, I don't know if Max/Warner Brothers. Also, I hate the name Max. It should be HBO Max. But I don't know if Warner Brothers really has the money to buy one of the other streaming services. But we'll see. yeah, so eventually I think either two major things are going to happen. You're going to have the culmination, number one, the culmination of basically everything into two major streaming things. You have like more of like a backlog category, most likely the eventual Disney Plus amalgamation, and then you have the new content, highly streamable content that is kind of just pumped out in the daily, almost like YouTube videos, which will eventually become like the Netflix. Most likely going to be paired up with like an Apple TV type thing, because Apple TV also pumps out, I mean, there's a reason why they have like half the awards in the entirety of streaming. Apple TV pumps out insanely good quality content that's not recognized enough. Like Severance, I never see people talk about Severance, or I love Ted Lasso and stuff like that. So I would be surprised if Netflix and Apple congeal together, as they're both kind of the old heads, and also I don't think Apple has enough subscriptions to really uphold those series, at least at the production value they have them at. And then as that culminates, I think it'll weaken everything, and I think people are just going to be confused and overburdened, and will go into other platforms. So you might see a large boost in high quality content over at YouTube. I wouldn't be surprised if you see a big boost in people watching cable stuff again. The only time I ever watch cable, realistically, is for some sports games or whatever. But also, like, there is a very, very large demographic of people that are not in their, basically, like, anywhere between, like, their 30s and 40s and up, that still watch cable. Like, it's not just gone. There's a reason why there's still cable boxes. There's a reason why Dish TV and Verizon and all. Verizon doesn't have a cable box. What am I thinking? There's a reason why there's companies out there that still have cable boxes and still provide cable. People are buying it, and that'll always be a thing, in my opinion. There will always be some type of cable that would allow people to do stuff. Now, will there be big bundles or whatever where you can get like 5,000 channels? That's kind of out of the window. People don't want to pay for that anymore. People want to buy stuff that's directly going to be for them. And I think that's where cable is, where it's going to lie, where you'll get the newest content first on there, and then have it streamed like an hour later, probably on Paramount Plus. But I wouldn't be surprised if cable sees a small push and renaissance on its own while the streaming wars continues to culminate. I actually wrote a paper on this, which is crazy to think about. I wrote a paper on this a few years ago, prior to any of the mergers, prior to the Disney Plus, Hulu, ESPN merger that really culminated everything, just kind of like floated away. Prior to the HBO Max merger as well. And I think a couple other streaming services did exist, like CNN Plus existed for a little bit. And I wrote a paper on this where I was like, yeah, no, this is not going to happen. It's like over the next like 10 years or so, maybe even sooner, there's just going to be a big culmination of everything kind of squishing together. My paper was so good, by the way, and I don't want to brag, but I'm going to brag. My paper ended up having a bonus question on the back where it was like, what streaming services do you believe will like be around, and you had to like put like a little like paragraph or whatever with a text, and she would say yes or no, this is a good answer or whatever, or like a creative answer. And so it was based off of one of my answers and also my essay as well. So anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this rant. Streaming services are very interesting, and I'm excited to see what happens in the future. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe and like the channel, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.